Yep. Okay. I'm going to call to order the Finance meeting from March 9th, 2023. Teresa, will you roll?
Mr. Johnson,
Here.
Dr. Pandolfi,
Here.
Ms. Wyckoff. Ms. Wyckoff.
She's a couple minutes away. So she
Okay, she was online too. Okay. Ms.
I'm here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay. All right, you have the agenda posted earlier. Changes. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion to approve the agenda. So a second.
Second.
And we'll just take roll on everything. There's only 2 votes. We're just going to go ahead and take roll. Teresa.
Ms. Wyckoff, Mr. Thies,
Yes.
Dr. Pandolfi,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Okay. Michelle will be here in a second. All right. The minutes were posted. I made a couple changes, corrections. Anybody? I don't know if anybody else did.
Did not.
Do you have any corrections, Yummy? Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Well, yeah, I'll second, and I have a question about what, oh, you need to call the rest of the roll.
No, when, if you have.
Yeah, I just, what did you change? I mean,
Oh, just,
It was
minor,
minor edits.
oh, I thought,
a
okay.
word here and a word there, just minor edits, no change in substance.
Yeah, that, because I copied and printed the other day and I just changed. Okay, that's fine then.
We take roll.
Yeah, the first and the second. Ms. Wyckoff, Mr. Thies, Dr. Pandolfi,
Aye.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. All right. Financial statements for February.
We are 8 months into the fiscal year. And by the end of February, we have received most of the tax revenues from all 3 counties. The amount is $51.8 million, plus 6.5 recorded under debt service fund. That's about 95% of budgeted revenue. The number is about $600,000 lower than last year's, but this year's expected. On the expenditure side, payroll and benefits, we spent about 65% of the budget. We are on track to meet the budget. Library materials, $7.2 million, very close to the last year's number. All other operational accounts is about $6.1 million, just a little higher than last year number. I believe we are on track to be very close to the budget. Including the utility accounts, it's a little over $1 million, 66% of the budget.
What was the last one?
Oh, the utility accounts. Gordon, if you remember, we revised down that number a little. But it's a good budgetary number. For capital project fund, we have spent about 50% of the budget. I think the total amount of expenditure could be a little below the budgetary number. For the debt service fund, we made a second payment of the year, $3.7 million for principal, $1.4 million for interest, leaving a balance of about $55 million for the debt. For health insurance fund, the employer and the employee's contribution is right on the target, 66% of the budget. $2.5 million. For the admin fee and the reinsurance, that's close to $800,000, 80% of the budget. It's higher than what we projected. But medical claim is about $1.7 million, a little below the projection. That's a quick overview of the financial for the month.
All right, I have a question. You mentioned we're at 95 on the revenue. You say
Tax revenue.
you collected most, so what are you comparing to?
The 95% of budgeted tax revenue.
Okay, I'm just, if I heard correctly, you said we've received most. We will still have collections coming in?
Yes, I believe we'll be very close to
How much are we expecting?
maybe $1 million between now and the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. We're going to talk about this a little when we get into the later budget or later agenda item, but are you tracking the components by county in terms of current revenue and past? And okay, so how do those compare generally speaking in terms of the assumptions that were made?
Very close. Maybe I believe will be a little higher than could be a little higher than budget. Current tax.
For current tax, what about the back taxes?
Back tax is it's hard to put. Well, back tax, I believe, will be right on the top. It's hard to say because it's still too early. A lot of back tax may come in the next few months, and also we have to make adjustments based on the year-end receivable.
On a cash basis, or will we be?
No, yeah, it's a modified cash basis. So we will also count the amount received in July and August, 60 days after year end.
You're talking about for the June 30 financial statement?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, all right. I have another question on the balance sheet, which is,
Wrong button. Trying to silence it.
on the balance sheet, we're showing
Minus.
on the February 23, and I would like to have us include the prior year's balance sheet. So I was just doing some comparisons. If I look at the general fund net of the due from other funds, of which the only one is the capital project fund, then our fund balance is 43.6 million. Last year is 46.7. It's down about 3 million. And I looked at 21 as well, and it was pretty much the same. So we're down about 3 million. I don't have any reason to suspect anything other than Prop L spending that impacted that.
Yes.
Is that correct? Would that be a fair assumption to make?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, we'll get into the rest later. So that's what's hitting our surplus. So other than that, the balance sheet, what I point out in the balance sheet, if you look at that, under the capital project fund, you'll see that we're still $2 million underwater on the investments in the capital account. That's not going to change in the current rate environment. So we'll have to address, I guess we'll talk about where that is in terms of addressing the cash deficit.
Yes.
So can you tell me where if we just, if I'm adding two numbers together to get to my available surplus, assuming I liquidated the entire capital account, where would I be? I don't know if I'm not trying to put you on the spot here. I just think it's a number I'd like to see and say, if we just took the slate, wiped it clean, got everything into a money market account, what would that do to our cash flow? And I know I would take a $2 million hit on the sale, but what does it do to my cash flow, and does it?
Okay, so if we take the loss, then we can get back $23 million. And we can put it into the money market, subtract about $10 million owed to general fund. So that's about $13 million.
13, but I have projects ongoing. I have
Yes.
2. How many do I have ongoing? So
We have 4 projects under construction. We
and
will need about 20 million, close to $20 million, I think.
okay, all right. Let's just defer that piece. Okay. Any questions on the financials? I'd only ask one, on the health insurance fund, can we change the label under expenses to just medical claims? I think that's what you said they are. I mean, the prescription drugs are part of the claims, are they not?
It's part of the claims, yes.
So isn't that just medical claims
Yeah, sure.
in the aggregate? Yeah,
I can just say
I
medical.
think it's just a better descriptor of what that is. Any other questions on that? Okay, keep going.
Well, next 2 statements, I think those are the payments. We have started to provide the all payments made by the library during the month, including credit card transactions. For each credit card transactions, there is a description in the notes for each one. So you may let me know if you have any questions about it.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Cody, if you'll back up, does this information come out of the system, or are you doing, is this?
We have the bank, central bank provides an online reconciliation tool for us. They put everybody's statements, including transactions, on the website.
Okay.
And each one can upload, each cardholder can upload the receipts, and the managers can approve. And I can generate reports based on what the input from cardholders.
So the purchase notes is coming from
Come from the cardholder.
cardholder. Okay, so, all right. Okay. Anybody have questions on that, please? Okay. Keep going.
And I believe next, okay, next one is the person.
Back up, Cody. We didn't finish. There we go.
But again, those are the payments we made during the month, and the credit cards included as part of the payments there. Also, I believe there are 2 other reports. One is the investment. The other one, yeah. Can you, Cody, can you move up, go back a few pages? There should be still under 5.2. There should be a conference training. Okay. Yeah, we have, those are the new information we have started to provide. For conference and the training, we just started in January, so I have 2 months numbers there. At the bottom of that report, the last line is the mileage reimbursement. This is the aggregate total for everyone's mileage reimbursement. And the report shows that the name of the conference and the name of the trainings. Those are the 3 segments for the report.
Is the mileage reimbursement is that just 1 month in January or is that year to
Yes.
date?
1 month in January, but most of them, December and June are the 2 heaviest months of the year. Most people turn in the request for reimbursement in December and got paid in January.
So that's 6 months.
Not everybody, a lot of people.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a
February, that's why February dropped down to.
lot of miles.
Yes. Next page is the consulting and the legal. And we have 2 sections. And the first column is everything from July the 1st to the end of January. And the second column is February's only. And on the legal side, there might be some invoices still under review. So the numbers is low for the month and the more to come.
And by that, you mean what?
Some
From the legal invoices from,
for the past months,
and that would be from
I'm not sure about which month.
our general counsel or other legal counsel?
Just the councils we are currently use now.
Okay.
Yes.
General counsel will change. I've seen some invoices that have yet to be approved.
I mean, are they invoicing monthly or are they in arrears and invoicing?
Monthly, I think I'm getting them, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this is the second batch I've received, but the first one predates my arrival. So what I'm looking at now is over the past 2 months. Past month, excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, that would be February.
Okay. All right. So we talked about sometime last fall, maybe it was November or December, where we said the legal fees are going to be over the budget. Is that number changed
You will be,
materially or is it what you're, because what was budgeted? Like 40,000?
yeah,
30? I don't
I
know.
believe we'll be definitely over the budgetary number. I don't know how much.
Well, where are we to date then? I can't read those numbers.
$67,000 as of today. And I believe that number will be way over $100,000 by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, but almost half of that is Waldeck, which was which is Megan and the
Yeah.
search committee,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
I might also,
Go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry.
I might also add that the appears to be, I apologize for my vision, appears to be the second element of the legal fees that was addressed. And
$18,000, $18,800.
I think that will not be reoccurring, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, we are behind on payments.
Well, no, I mean, in terms of the presence that would generate the billable hours was addressed, but I'm not familiar with the consulting firms. What type of consulting are they offering?
Okay, the first one, I believe that's for the development office. It's consulting service for the software they use. The second one may be for the storage center. I'm not sure about the last.
Somebody, can you blow up the screen a little bit? Thank you. There we go.
Great. I can say.
Now we can read it.
Okay, great.
Okay,
So the third one is who's helping us with our community needs assessment. So that's Monica, that would be the third consultant.
okay. And cap key for $25 is what? Not, it's,
It's an independence law firm.
oh, okay, okay. Okay,
That's my report for the financial.
anybody have any questions? Yummy,
No, good.
all right. Unless, like I said, I think the only, I'd like to see a comparable balance sheet just for the prior year, just pull out the page and stick it in there. So we have that for comparison. Next item on the agenda is the budget process and timeline and the work session of the ad hoc committee. So Aaron, I'll let you talk about that and what transpired.
Sure. So the ad hoc budget committee met on February, thanks,
23rd.
Yeah, 23rd. And the committee is comprised of the board president, vice president, and treasurer, and the committee chairs for technology, building, personnel, and fundraising. And staff was also present.
Finance.
Excuse me. And finance. Yeah. And so we all met together to kind of talk about the library's priorities for budgeting in the years 2023 and 24. We talked a little bit about process, the way it worked last year and the way it could work this year. Came to agreement that it would be a much more collaborative process. We worked on a timeline, which I do not have committed to memory, but it's attached to the board minutes. I think here and also for the ad hoc committee meeting. The general idea is to have ad hoc review of the budget kind of at the beginning and nearing the end of the budgeting season with input from finance and the other committees with an end date of hopefully June. Oh, Teresa, if you have the timeline
Yes.
at your fingertips.
Yeah, I can pull it up.
But there was some conversation about the timeline itself, and those in attendance agreed that it was a reasonable outline. And we agreed to move forward. And so just kind of key points is staff budgets are due on March 20th. And then there's a series of steps where we share our work with the committees over the next couple months. And Teresa, do you want to give us a
Sure, we
little
can do that.
overview?
While we're doing that, Cody, can you pull up the minutes that's attached to that item 6.1? And if you go down to about the second page, so you can see it as well. March 21, board resolution of non-binding levy rate. April the 12th, personnel budget submitted to committee. April 17, technology budget submitted to committee. April 18, personnel budget review and adoption. Voting item by the full board. April 27, buildings budget to the committee. And on May the 9th, the ad hoc budget committee would meet again. May 16, the proposed budget submitted to the full board. June 8th, finance committee's final review. And then June 20, final budget submitted to full board. There it is there. Can you expand that a little bit, Cody, if you can?
And so this is the timeline as it was agreed upon on the 23rd. If we feel like we're running into some roadblocks and we need to make some tweaks to it, the ad hoc committee would make that decision, and I'm happy to make adjustments. It's a progressive timeline. But I think we can get to our final desired outcome of having an approved budget in June. What I didn't mention is that staff outlined 4 priorities from a budgeting perspective. The first of which is staff or our workforce. Second is financial accountability and process. The third is meeting our capital obligations. And the fourth is innovation via leveraging internal assets, which is a little bit cryptic. But what we're saying there is within our budget, there needs to be resources for R&D or research and development. It's my opinion that innovation is something that this library system is known for. And to do that, we do need seed money to develop new ideas. But those are ranked in order of priority, and the board did seem to agree with these priorities as set forth by staff. So that's where we are. If I'm missing anything, any of us who are in attendance, free to chime in.
So can I ask a question or you have more?
Ask away. That's it.
So the first date is March 20th with staff. Is that on track?
Yep, it's a hard deadline. So,
Oh, it is, okay.
yeah, so I mean, we will begin work on individual budgets by agency at that time. So that's when they're due.
Okay, great. The, anything else?
Nope.
The 2 things that I guess I would want some discussion on or feedback is this is a different, number one, this is a different process that has been done historically. I think the finance committee in the past was sort of at the tail end of the cycle. The budgets came through the different chairs, committee chairs, and finance. By the time I got to finance, there really wasn't much left to do. I think the question I have is twofold. One is, the May meeting of the ad hoc committee is set for the second week, I believe, which is also our general finance, the week of what I'll call the current finance schedule. And should the finance committee, take some time to look at what's sort of in the pipeline before the ad hoc committee gets it, or should finance be on the back end of that? And if that's the case, does that create some timing issues? If we have questions that we think the ad hoc committee needs to address, because that would have to cause them to meet again. And it's a very tight time schedule at that point, because the 16th is with the way the Tuesdays hit, we're only halfway through the month. So it'd be nicer if we were in the next week, but that's the way the calendar rolls. So what are your thoughts on that? In terms of the timing of the committee meeting, as well as the role of the finance committee, given the ad hoc committee is being different than in the past.
Well, I have a question on that.
Okay.
Obviously, I wasn't here for any of this, but I was thinking that I read in board policy or something a month or two ago that these department budgets should be prepared now, and I guess set to be delivered maybe the latter part of March. But I thought that went to the finance committee. I thought those budget proposals went directly to the finance committee. Now, I don't know what happened last year, but I thought when I was reading board policy, that's what was supposed to be. So I don't know what board policy we have and what actually happened trustees last year. So that's I thought these individual budgets went to finance first.
Well, put me on the spot here. I'm not really.
Well, yeah.
If that is the policy, then of course, we need to follow the policy. And a little unclear on exactly what happened last year, but again, to restate my vision for this, that the whole point of structuring our budgeting process this way is to create more transparency so that the individual committees aren't operating in isolation of each other. And so to your point, Trustee Johnson, I do think it's a good idea to have as many eyes on individual budgets as possible. And if that means sharing them with finance earlier on, so be it. Go ahead.
Is there a reason those can't run concurrently?
What do you mean?
Well, again, and I, I have no problem with the proposed schedule of the ad hoc committee. I just think and again, I want the others to provide input, but as I said at the ad hoc meeting, I really don't think it's appropriate for the hands of the finance to be tied or feel like they're tied as things come through, through the pipeline. So again, I want Michelle and Ron and Yummy to chime in here with their thoughts. I don't want to set the schedule.
My thoughts on the ad hoc committee or just.
Well, again, back to.
I like the idea of the committee because I think it's always, by the time it's gotten to finance, that you can't really change it.
I would agree with you.
I mean, and it's kind of like, here it is, that's it, there's no discussion. And this is always something I felt has needed to happen, was that there needed to be more discussion. It's more of, okay, this is what we're doing. And you deal with it. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like every committee does this and then, we're all supposed to be a board and don't really have any input or discussion. It's just, that's what we're doing. So I do like the idea of this a lot. I mean, I think it's smart to sit there and have everybody kind of know what everybody else is doing. I mean, and have I think it's a smart idea. So if we need to change things to make this work better, I'm all for that. If we need to change policy or, whatever we need to do. If we
Yeah,
don't-
I mean, if that was the policy, I can't tell you we followed it.
Yeah, we didn't. So I don't think we did. I mean, so sorry.
Only the reason I mentioned I came here from another political subdivision that is smaller than this, but the budget is larger than this. And so that's exactly what we did. The finance committee was presented the city manager's proposal. And then you had a series of public hearings. All departments were involved to present their views and it was open to the public, obviously. So it certainly wasn't the case of at the end where finance gets a proposal and it's already done. So I think we got to start with finance and all the recommendations from the CEO, which represents the various departments. And then we have a public discussion about what those departments have been asking. Now, I don't know if that's like, I thought I
Isn't
read
that
that.
the purpose of the June meeting? Or are you thinking something different?
Okay,
This is a very tight time frame. Okay, so if you go back to, and I'm just.
Which with all the changes, I don't know that we would be able to. I'm not saying I'm not opposed to doing that. Extra figuring out a way to do it. We have the one meeting, but I'm not opposed to doing it the way that you're saying it. Maybe next year we plan a little bit better.
And that's fine.
This is the problem that we've run into every year, is kind of like, we get it and then we have to have it done and we're out of time.
Yes.
Well, for our hearings would go first and they were going in April. When we started having departmental meetings, presentations in April. And then the finance committee itself, the budget committee itself didn't have a proposal till the latter part of May. And then it went to the full city council, i.e. here it goes to the full board in, again, the latter part of May, 1st of June. And maybe it's too late now, but I'd like to at least look at that process.
No, I'm not
Well,
opposed
that's kind of
to.
where, Ron, do you have any?
My only impression is very, very, very general, but in contrast to the previous methods I saw for about 5 years and Michelle saw for many years more, is exactly, there was a time crunch which had everything effectively baked in, and there's no response. But compare that to this year. Two phases, some of which are concurrent, is one is to get numbers that are authentic. I mean, authentic, real numbers. The money's coming in and money going out. And I think we pretty much know what the money is coming in, but where the money goes out through this process that Aaron initiated, I think is absolutely essential and extremely welcome. And I can envision there would be a sense of friction. We're dealing with a limited amount, namely a set amount of dollars, and how we address it is by prioritizing among the four features that Aaron presented. And I think that's precisely the way to go. Now, how we allocate among the four and then within each one of the fours, I think open to discussion, but the mere fact that we're doing this is just the sunshine and the fresh air is coming in.
Thank you.
So I,
Hot water. I was gonna go get it.
look at that.
I know, it was
Wow.
great. Magic.
MCPL's new concierge service. Yeah.
Hey, we should have brought you here. Oh,
Right?
Hello,
Tell me
this
you
is
need-
Deb.
Hold on.
Can I make a comment
Tell
whenever
me, go ahead.
available? Okay. Do we need to look at the bylaws, the policies, that Bob was talking about? I just pulled them up. If maybe Teresa even could put them up on the board. Appendix C, it says budget calendar. Maybe she could pull that up. It's on page 76 of the hard copy. I guess probably on the soft copies too, and it just says what needs to be done in March, April, May, and June. So I don't know if we want to look that up now just to see if, I think what Aaron is saying, I think it would go with the schedule. But anyway, if we want to check it, we could. It's just a very short thing.
Cody, can you, thank you, Dr. Pandolfi. We actually have it on the screen now.
Great.
It's pretty small, but Cody, can you
Yeah, no, it's.
highlight that at all? I can email it to you guys.
No, I've looked at it.
You have it, okay.
My feeling here is that this is an outline that we followed in the past that really kind of exacerbates the problem at the end. And so I hear what you're saying. And then I'm not opposed to rethinking the timeline, or at least redefining what it means to present a budget to a specific committee. So if you present a personnel budget to that committee, might be speaking.
I think you've already got huge improvements with what you're doing with your committee, though.
Let me, can I jump in?
Yeah,
I think historically, the board had, I'm gonna go last year, and I was on the board for 17, 18, actually 2 years, because in 19, I was kind of like, I got busy outside and I was not totally engaged in the 1920 budget. But I'm gonna go off last year. The information that was given to the board was extremely high level. There were very few comparisons to prior years. I will say, as an individual, I didn't really feel comfortable that with the numbers, because I couldn't get my arms around what was there. I think a good example is, or the one area that Quan laid out was utilities, where the initial budget was, I don't remember, Quan, like $1
$1 above.
It was high, okay? And so it got dialed. So when we got to the levy calculation, we dialed that number back. Another example would be the only other example that I can say that got adjusted was the online subscriptions. That I think the initial budget was 2.8 million, and the actual cost was in the range of 2-3, which is what you've spent so far. Am I correct on the financials? And so if the committees do the work and come in with numbers that we can rely upon and we feel comfortable that are, have integrity. I don't have a problem with the timing at all. I think that's what you're trying to get to, Aaron. That will, raise the comfort level of the finance committee. And we won't have the number of questions, at least I don't think we'll have the number of questions. And again, we have a limited revenue number. So, the priorities are going to be key and how you allocate within the priorities. Ultimately, that's a decision you and staff have to make. Say, this is how we want to allocate. And we cover those 4 bases in some manner and we go from there.
Okay, so hearing 2 things. The budgeting should be done it's compared to actual expenditures instead of budgeting to a budget number from last year.
Correct. And let me just interject here, not to lose on which was your train of thought. The budget was compared to a budget, but not to an actual. Right. And usually I would, like I said, I'm accustomed to what would we spend and then what's going to change in the coming year, like utilities, you open up a branch or whatever the case may be. So go ahead.
Sure. And then, okay, so understood. And then the second one is more about the process. And I think embedded in that is really what is the role of the finance committee as it relates to the budget. Because admittedly, it is a little confusing. You have these individual committees with roles that are outlined here in our bylaws. They seem to be in conflict. Not in conflict, but the cart gets before the horse during the budgeting season. But Bob, if you could just explain a little bit, like in a perfect world, with a surplus of time, what would you envision the process looking like? The full budget is presented to the finance committee?
Sure, I would assume by March sometime, but if you're not starting, if reports aren't due until the latter part of March, certainly in the first part of April, the finance committee would have the budget from the CEO in front of them. And finance committee is the one that I assume has, or I would assume would have hearings where department directors would come in and explain what their requests are all about. And it's sort of open to the public. And then, of course, by hopefully mid-May, certainly the latter part of May, the finance committee then will come together and vote on what the finance committee perceives to be the budget for the next fiscal year. And then that goes to the full board in, well, obviously sometime in June.
So in this example, then individual committees.
That's new to me. That would be totally new to me in terms of other committees participating.
Right. Yes.
There's a piece that it's actually the next agenda item that I think is crucial to this entire process, which is that we need to be looking beyond the current fiscal year. I mean, we're not, I understand the city's, the city structure and in my own, my own municipality, but the key to this is we should be able to look out at least two, if not 3 years with some degree of accuracy about what spending is going to be. We have to have that on the capital side. The number of surprises we had last year in the capital fund were more than we anticipated. The operational side, we have 32 branches. It should be fairly easy to budget what I'll call the cost to keep the doors open and the lights on. And that goes for both the utilities and snow removal and what I call the base level of staffing and headquarters staffing. So then you start adding the things that Aaron talks about, like, well, the things you add on are what are the capital needs and the timing of those issues, whether it's new or replacement matters. And your, as he calls it, I think which is appropriate, the R&D factor. And how much are you going to budget for that? That should be a known number. Shouldn't get buried in too many places. So I guess I'm inclined to use this as a learning year. And let's see, and I think it would be good if the finance committee got that information along the way and we had a chance to digest it and give feedback and do whatever. So I don't see a reason they can't run concurrently. But you know, we're not going to solve. The only way I think we can address your concern, Bob, is to back it up and start in February.
Oh, I would prefer that, but yes.
Yeah. But again, I think if we have a projection structure, that takes away the surprise factor. And we're well aware of what's going to be coming in the next year.
But also, if we have a conversation then, we have to think ahead. We had to think ahead 2 to 3 years because personnel is obviously a major part of the city budget and a library budget. So we kind of have to know what agreements we have and understandings we have for a 2 or 3 year period. So yeah, we have to.
Yeah,
forced to look at that. And also just we met more often than once a month at this time. So this wasn't done a month at a time. You had to meet 2 or 3 times a month.
During the budget?
During the budget process.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
It was once a month normally, but on budget season,
there's no reason we can't call an ad hoc meeting for finance and say, let's take an hour and have a Zoom call if we want to. I don't know. I don't know when to say we're going to do that yet, but I mean, if a number of questions come up and we want to just, push it back on Aaron to address, then, that would be an easy way to do it. I don't know that we have to.
I support that idea.
What?
I support that idea. I mean,
So
there'll be a need.
but I'm inclined to let's at least get through March and see where staff is doing before we, decide to switch horses.
and you mean, and ask us all, see you every day for a week.
Exactly. So what I'm hearing is, and we don't have to make a decision today, is the timing of the May meeting with the finance versus the ad hoc. I'm going to suggest we leave that in the air for now, and let's get through the middle of April, and we can decide. Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah, that's
Okay. All right. Yummy, is that okay with you?
Yeah, just a general comment. I again, I'm reverting back to my feelings from before. Our bylaws establish that the board gets involved at the activity level, which is broad general categories of personnel and collections and all that. And there's this notion that I have not found anyplace else, certainly not in Missouri statutes or anything, of a legal level of control, which means, in other words, basically you come in and you just give a general blessing at a 30,000 foot level. And I think that obviously that's completely abandoned. But my thought would be that if we could just determine the dollar number that's coming in, then have a broad discussion on how we're going to allocate that. And of course, there's going to be friction in that, but I think that's probably more interaction among IT and personnel and collections as opposed to action by the finance committee. Because once the different departments decide how they are going to prioritize what they want, and then probably at the executive level decide, okay, you want this desperately, but you're only going to get 85% of what you want. I want that decision to be made by the professionals as opposed to us in the finance committee. We're just going to say, what you work out, can you live within the dollars that are available, as opposed to the finance committee saying these are the dollars available. Now we're going to kind of influence how you spend them. I think that's within a prudential judgment of, if you will, the librarians.
Agreed. But to add a layer on top of that, I think librarians in general owe it to trustees and the taxpayer to give a very general justification for why things are a priority or why budget numbers are where they are.
Absolutely. And then this committee will tell you how you prioritize things, if it's acceptable, and I'm assuming, of course, it will be. They're also going to say, but this is where the dollar ends.
Sure. And so, so we would obviously justify our budget numbers, but also I think it's an important part of the story to let people know what's been left off the table because of our current challenges. And that, I think, informs our decisions for 2 and 3 years out. Because we simply can't do everything this year. But it needs to be understood that, down the road in the near future and not so near future, that there'll be additional expenses on the capital side or equipment side or anything like that.
Yeah, just you mentioned a few moments ago about the utilities, with the construction, I can't imagine that just not being a mini skyrocket of cost in that area, which of course is going to be at the cost of something else, collections, presentations, whatever.
With utilities, we have that solved. We'll be powering our libraries with magic beans.
I like those little doors.
I think we have posted budget, so.
Tell that to
All
everybody.
right. So let's move, if we're okay, we can move on. We're okay with that, Tom?
Mhm.
All right. 7 and 8 are somewhat related, but let's talk about the next pieces of it, and I think you have these printed. Are some charts. All right. There, stop there. So the first one you have, and I think you have it in print version in front of you as well. That is something from last year. I didn't do any additional work on it. The numbers are derived, the financial numbers were derived from worksheets that Quan did and presented to, I think they came through the finance committee to the board. The blue vertical bars are the 2017 projection that was done after the levy, the 16 levy was passed. And then I guess I'll call the yellowish mustard vertical bars are the projections that were done in a file that I think is dated 2021. And the rest of the data, the housing units, the population, those I pulled those off of a file that comes off the MARC website, the Mid-America Regional Council. And they keep population stats by county, city, whatever the case may be in the metro area, includes Kansas as well. So you can see the reason I put that up there is to show you the trend of population and to show you the divergence, the diverging trends between the initial 2017 numbers upon which the initial capital Prop L plan was based, and 2021, and the revenue trajectory changed. Okay. And I think that, at least from my view, that influenced the spending, both operationally and on Prop L. Cody, if you can go to the next chart. Okay, these are also these are from last year. If you go back in April's finance committee, you'll see these same charts. You have those in front of you. And as I explained last year, and again, I've got some new people on the committee here, but you'll see a fairly flat trend dating back to 2006. I think that was all the information again, these numbers came from Quan, so I didn't create anything. So these are the assessed values as well as the taxes that were generated by each county. And that I'll say the taxes collected, not necessarily the taxes that were billed, but these were the taxes collected. So if you notice, what I'll call, the dip in 2009 after the banking fiasco. And it was fairly level for a number of years up until 2017. And you'll see that the assessed values start to show an upward trend. I had discussions with a county assessor, and I think I'm assuming it was consistent with the other counties, not only Clay and Clatt, but across Missouri. The Missouri Tax Commission was pressuring the assessors to get values up to what the statute says has to be about 90% of market. I don't have the statute in front of me, but that's what the assessor relayed to me. So a couple of things happened. You had the levy, the higher levy kick in, and you had the assessor starting to increase values at the same time. So in Missouri, the values are adjusted every 2 years on the odd year. So 17, 19, 21, you see these big jumps. And, you have, because of now some inflation, you have the cost of new houses going up because the cost to build them goes up, and the assessors think that if that new house is worth more, then your old house is worth more because what you paid for 20 years ago isn't reflective of what the market value is. So that's what you see happening there. And, this is a dynamic that I don't know how it's going to play out in the future, but I think it contributed to the tax, both of these factors. You had the increase in levy and you had these increased values coming into play. We'll talk about the levy calculation. The other thing is your new construction, which kicked in, I don't know, what was it, 5 years after, 5 years later, probably 14, 15, and 16, you have a lot of new construction kick in. You have all your new construction comes in at the current levy rate. So when your new house that would have cost 200,000 20 years ago is now being built for 300,000 or 350, you have that additional revenue based on simply nothing more than the cost increase in the price of the house. So that gives you some idea of why the revenue trend changed. Does that make sense?
Well, I have a question.
And then the last, Cody, the last one is nothing but a combined number showing you the stacked county. You can see it's Jackson, Clay, and Platte counties and what's happened on an overall basis. Even the 2017, when the levy rate went from the approved maximum of 40 cents, it never, because of Hancock, it never got to 40 cents. So, and it's been coming down ever since because, again, the valuations are adjusted. So Hancock does an offset, but as Quan's going to explain, there's also the 5% or the CPI increase that comes into play.
Well,
You had a question.
no, I think that was my question. I wanted to go into the 5%. You talk about CPI, you talk about new construction, then there's 5%. So it is going to be explained in this meeting.
Yeah, well, it's the same.
Well, I just think-
Where do we have that? I have that under 8.1. We can do that. We can skip over that.
No, whatever. I just want to make sure we talk about, we still have a limitation in Missouri because of the Constitution.
Correct.
That
but
Kansas would not. If you talk about Mark, for example, the Kansas side.
But you still have,
Yeah, I
increase coming off.
Oh, yeah.
Inflation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
But there's a
I
limitation.
think the perception of Hancock is that it levels what I call, you can raise the water in the bathtub, the water level in the bathtub, but the levy rate goes down by an equivalent amount. And that's not true when you get to the actual taxes because you get that inflation factor or the 5% kicks in.
Yes. If you can add the new construction on, that comes in at the end.
Comes in at the current rate. Yes. So I just provide this for historical just reference and understanding how that revenue charge changed as it like it did. Can we flip Cody to the, let's see. Okay, there's the levy process. This is the page that Quan presented at the ad hoc meeting. Again, just to review this, the assessment, Jackson County requires a non-binding levy, which is on our agenda for just as a procedural item that will go to the board. That will then get filed with Jackson County. The initial assessments are done. We should have those. I think it says June and July. I think initial assessments are probably done by May, and then there's the Board of Equalization for any what's the word I want? Objections.
Appeal.
Appeal, yes, thank you. Appealing that, and then the final assessment is done either mid-August. Actually, I think September 1st is when they're all supposed to be done. And from there, then the calculation for the levy is done by Quan. It can go to the auditor, but it has to go back through the counties, and then it comes back to the board in September for approval, and then the board approves that levy in September, and that then has to be in the mail by the 30th of September, back to the counties. So the calculation, as Quan noted, is last year's revenue plus the lesser of the current year increase. Quan, is that one of the two?
Three.
Either the increase in the CPI or 5%?
It's the smallest of the three.
Of the three. So when you say the current year's increase in,
And the CPI or 5%. So whichever the smallest one.
okay. So historically, the CPI was not the lowest, it was the lowest, and that was the increase factor. And right now, we're going to be at the 5%, correct?
Yes.
And then the new construction comes in. So
Yeah, if I have a question on that, about a question I had. On the new construction, it's not adjusted by any other percentage, it's just the value of the new construction.
it's purely the value that goes on the books.
And that's the CPI, and I forgot what it is, but it still exceeds 5%.
I'm sorry. The only adjustment to new construction is TIF.
Yeah, well, I
Which we don't bring that in. We bring in the net number.
The county provides both. Yes, the county provides both numbers.
But we only use the net. I
Yes.
think this came up in another board meeting.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Okay. So the next. All right. I can take an hour and drag you through this, but I'm not going to. What you have in front of you are the detailed calculations we used last year. So when we went through the levy what I'll call the projection process for trying to determine what our values were, we did two different sets of calculations. What's in those yellow columns were we thought kind of a mid-range likely. And then the columns on the right, which were the green shade, the green highlight, were more conservative. Okay. And you can see that you have the components between the real, the personal, the state assessment. And I don't want to, if I say this correctly, that comes through the state, but not through the county. That's paid by the state and then comes back to us, correct?
Well, yes, like a railway. During the construction, it's assessed by the county. Once the construction finished, they turn over to the state. It's a statewide assessment.
Right. So, but those monies don't, I'm getting into the weeds here, but anyway, let's skip the weeds. So those are the three main components. The real, obviously the real property, as I said, is set every 2 years at the December 31. So it's set as of December 31, or 2022. Theoretically, it's supposed to be at 90% of the water level. The personal is, and we give an example, autos are set at 33% of value. I know there's a bill that was proposed by one of the state senators to drop that to 31%. I can't tell you that all the assessors do the same thing. Actually, that goes across the board for real property too. And so you can see that produced the total. Then we threw in a new construction factor, and we get to the total. And we said, we're not going to collect all that because there's always some that is appealed and late pays, whatever the case may be. So I would like to see us track our current data against this projection to see, one, how well we did, and also to make sure that our assumptions going forward, are reliable or reasonable. Okay. So in terms of, what is presented if we can put it on the board, I think we can do that at a higher level. At the finance committee, I'd like to see the full detail. So that, if you can, Cody, flip to the next page, then you have the revenue. Let's see. That gets into the pieces, the calculation of the taxes themselves. The one piece I mentioned earlier was the back taxes. You can see that on each county. I think in total, that's about 2.2 million we had in the 2020, the current year's projection. So again, I'd like to make sure that we're understanding how where those numbers are coming in, again, so we can make adjustments on a forward basis. So that gets us to the total revenue, and then the expenses are on the following page. Again, the expenses were projected out for each of the next three. Well, at the time, these were projected for the next 3 fiscal years. The debt payments are in there, and then the last page is where we made some adjustments, looked at where we stood relative to surplus. The board policy talks about surplus relative to annual operating expenses. We proposed a modification just in the calculation. We made a modification to include the following year's debt payment. Again, trying to be on the conservative side here. So we ended up at the levy that's shown there, 32.4. And then on the green columns were to take into effect some more modest and conservative assumptions and what would happen if the assessments didn't pan out the way they were on the left side of the page. So that's how that was done. So again, I think it's crucial that we track what's going on at the base level, because that's going to determine our revenues. So I want the committee to understand this, so it's not just a presentation of here's how much tax revenue you get. Hopefully, we can see what's happening in each of the 3 counties, and not that I can't tell you what's happening in all of Jackson County, but at least see the impact up here.
Okay, I'd like to give the committee some update on the numbers. These are the information we just received from Jackson County. And I believe the projection, the new tax year, the number will be different to that, this projection. Aaron, I haven't had a chance to discuss with the library director and other staff members yet, because I just got done before the meeting. If I may, I can show my numbers on the screen. Cody, could you show that report I emailed to you before the meeting?
Yes, Quan, let me get that pulled up. Just one second.
for, if it's a reassessment year, for each taxing districts to provide, to set a non-binding levy, Jackson County provides some information only in reassessment year. So could you make a little bigger? So at the top, you see the assessment for real property. That's just from Jackson County. That's a little over $9 billion. That's 23.6% increase from current year, 2022. This is much higher than the projection we made up last year. And for personnel, and the indication from the county is going to be flat. So they used last year's number exactly the same. And I don't believe it will be that number. It will be changed, but it will be close to last year's number, I believe. Unlike the real property, 23.6% increase. For the state assessed number, again, there was no change, same number as last year. So if I put them together, add together, that's average 18% increase over last year. The new assessment.
And what did we project?
I'm sorry.
What did we project?
Well, on average, I think it's a 5% increase for real property and a 2% increase on personal property. So,
No, I'm just thinking of Jackson County.
yeah. But only Jackson County provided the information. So assuming the other two counties will have the similar increase.
Okay, I'm with you. Go ahead.
Okay, so at the end, we will see over 18% increase from over last year. And we just mentioned about the statutory limitation of 5%. So Cody, could you move up, show the bottom half of the calculation? Thank you. So, okay, in the blue area, I used the number that's, well, the increase in assessment does not necessarily give us the same increase of tax revenue because of the statutory limitation up to 5%. So assuming we will get that 5%, $59 million is the current tax for 2022. I add a 5% increase. Also, we can get all the new constructions. Last year, the new construction was 1.6% of the total. So I used 1.5% for 2023. I added those three numbers together, we may get a close to $63 million in tax revenue for 2023. But we have to pay a fee to each county for collection. And some people may dispute with their assessment. So we don't always get a 100%. So I discounted at a 96% level to get a $60 million. Plus, we also get a replacement. The replacement tax from Clay County will be 10% lower. And we will also get a back tax. So I add projected current year tax to replacement tax, back tax. I get a projected tax revenue $64.7 million. I think that's maybe about $1 million over last year's projection.
You're saying 64.7 is the fiscal 23 number?
Yes, 23-24 fiscal year.
Our projection was 61,672,000. That's 3 million higher.
Okay. The budget for current year is $61.2 million. So that's, we may see a $3.4 million increase.
Right.
But I also like to do a more conservative way. So what if the new construction is not a 1.5%? It's only 1%. That would reduce the revenue. And also the collection rate, what if it's 95%, not 96%? And replacement tax, we may see a 10% decrease, and the back tax may also have a 10% decrease. Added them up, we get a $63.3 million. That would give us about $2 million more than current year's budget. So 2 projections based on the limited information from Jackson County is we either get a $3.4 million more or $2 million more over current year. So that's, I mean, I'm sure the number will be changed once we receive the assessments from 3 counties. But that's current numbers we have.
So I guess that's good news.
Well, the increase is expected, but a little higher than what we projected. Right. Yes.
Okay, so even with the levy decrease and we're above you, what I'll say, the yellow are, you know, I don't want to say they're yours, but they were the, what I'll call the mid-range projections. We're going to be above the mid-range.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. Is there a reason the back taxes, we had about $2.2 million. You're thinking those are going to be lower by 200,000 to 400,000?
Okay. Those people who will pay tax under protest or dispute may affect us may affect the back tax a year after. So it's really hard to project what the back tax would be. And for current year, 2022, it's higher. I believe it's higher, will be higher than next year, because next year, the back tax is really based on those people's action in 2022. And
yeah, well, I don't want to dial in on that. I just, it's a little
Yes.
unsure, but
conservative number, yes.
overall, you're thinking we're going to be somewhere between $2 and $3 million over the current budget.
More realistically, will be $3 million.
I would be surprised if Clay and Platt come in flat. Let's put it that way.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things historically, and again, if you go back to the you know, the levy was always the maximum available that was taken. And then you had these kind of adjustments come into play. And so you had one assumption for the budget, and then you got into the end of the year and the actual numbers come in and the actual revenues come in. It's like, oh, you know, we have a lot more than we planned on. So I guess I'm pleasantly surprised, and you know, I didn't expect this, but I'll take it. That's that.
Okay, well,
So
that's my update.
I think this is really helpful. So, and I think this is when you get so the rest of the counties will come in.
Well,
by
Platte County and Clay County will give us the assessment by the end of June. Jackson County always coming late. That's initial assessment. Final will be.
You're talking about assessments for the forward year though, correct? What about taxes for the current year? Because the taxes for the current year, they were billed. I know Platt can give you a report and say, here's what we billed.
Oh, at the end of the fiscal year, I will contact each county for those numbers, how much is, not being paid.
Let's do this offline. I don't want to get into the weeds here. I think we can dial in better or closer based on the information we pull off their December reports, but let's do that offline. Okay. All right. I didn't mean to drag everybody through, but I want you to understand how this all comes together at the detail level, as opposed to just giving you a total number and saying, here we are, and all 3 counties come into play. It's a single levy, but the dynamics of each county come into play as well as the state assessment factors. And we have new construction. I can tell you the housing, there may be a slowing of the housing market with interest rates, but there is a housing shortage in the metro area. And I don't think you may not see the prices increase for the type of growth that you get with free interest or zero interest, but you'll still see new houses going up.
Let me ask, so do we have preliminary 23 values for plat and clay?
No. That's what I said. Let me get offline with Juan. I think there's a way we can get some idea what those are.
Because I have Jackson.
Yeah, I know I can get clay. I know I can get plats, so I'm assuming clay has the same numbers. So, okay, where was I on the agenda? I'm lost.
Non-binding.
Hold on. So anyway, this is very helpful, Juan. That is really helpful. So I think when we get to the next meeting, we'll have probably even better numbers. I'd like to be able to have better numbers and some idea where we're going into next year. So, okay. Michelle, any questions? Okay, the next item, which is 9.1, is really procedural. I talked to Aaron about this. Normally that was just put on the board agenda. I asked for it to be put at the committee so we get things done at the committee level. This is for Jackson County only. I think historically it was submitted at the statutory rate. Am I correct, Juan, at the 40 cents?
Yes.
And is there any reason we should change that, or what should, since we have a selected levy, is that the one? Because even that selected levy is subject to Hancock.
Yes. Historically, yes, we always use the tag voter approved rate. And but Jackson County had a online meeting with all taxing districts. At the meeting, it indicated that they foresee up to 40,000 accounts may dispute the new reassessment. 4 years ago, that number was 20,000. So they are advising all taxing districts to provide a non-binding levy close to the real rate. So they can, to avoid a confusion when taxpayers receive the statement. But we don't have to follow their advice. We can do whatever, we decide.
So my question is the way I understand Hancock, it can go up or down. Is there a maximum that the levy can go up?
Unlikely.
Should we just pick
Based
it
on
up?
the information we have,
So they're saying they don't want us to use 40 cents. Is that correct?
they are advising us not to use
Okay.
for the confusion.
So my concern of taking the current rate is that I don't know what the adjustments are going to be because we don't have the calculation. So would it be safe to use the prior levy of 3,468?
Yes,
Would that be a safer play?
yes,
And you're comfortable with that?
yes. I don't believe you will go over that rate. So it's pretty safe to use that one.
Well, if Jackson County's up 23%, that
We may see a
Plain Jackson would have to go down.
well, we may see a rollback this year, so it's safe to use the higher.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
We can change this at the board meeting if we get better information. Yummy, are you still online? Did we lose her?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
Just give me a second.
Make
I have to walk across the room. Yeah.
So the motion we didn't type, well, the motion would be to approve a non-binding levy for submission to Jackson County of 0.3468, which is the levy that was in place for the 22
tax.
21 levy.
Need a second?
So is that, yeah, did I make the motion? And you're the second?
Sure.
Yes.
Can you repeat that, Mr. Cook? I'm sorry. Or,
The motion to the board would be to approve a non-binding levy to be submitted to Jackson County of 0.3468, which is the 2021 levy. Given, and I'm going to say that you can, that's the motion. The additional explanation is that Jackson County has requested that we not submit the statutory maximum due to confusion or just misunderstanding by taxpayers between what the statutory levy is versus what the actual ends up being. That's not part of the motion.
Correct.
okay. Okay, we'll talk about the actual motion, but what should definitely be in there is a 0.34680 per $100 of assessed valuation.
34.68 cents per 100 assessment.
Okay.
So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? Then will you take roll?
Ms. Wyckoff?
Yes.
Mr. Thies? Dr. Pandolfi?
Aye.
Mr. Cook?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'm going to try and speed through the last parts here. The Forbes report I put on the agenda again. We really haven't had time to discuss that in detail. There were a couple items in the report that I just wanted to bring to the attention and see if anyone else has comments. You have the staff response in here. I didn't intend to walk through each line item again because you've been through it. My comments were with regard to number 7, where it says the library's current policy requires staff. This is on the response I'm reading, and it's in regard to the fraud reporting or hotline. Requires staff to report to the board president and/or human resources director. Staff will evaluate third-party providers. I don't think we need to create the wheel here because I'm sure there are other policies that exist. I have a concern about reporting to having an or to the HR director, because again, the HR director reports to the CEO. There should be a channel by which staff can report to somebody. And then my question is, how does that come to the board? Again, I'm not trying to get to a conclusion here. I think we need to fully evaluate that. And I'm sure there are examples out there of what other organizations do. So,
I'll look into that. We've done a little bit of work on this
okay.
already, but I'll report back.
Okay. The number 8 was the security awareness training. This came about, again, the reason for the Forest Board came about because of the January 2022 ACH fraud. I thought there was some security awareness training that was done on an organization-wide basis. Is there not?
There is.
There is. So why would that vary why would we need special?
Yeah, if I may,
Go ahead.
the system-wide fraud training is more on the technology side. Ryan, if you correct?
It's general system, it's general security awareness training for all staff.
So but for finance department, we also focus on banking, deposits and other things areas, not just necessarily technology wise. And I have already contacted the insurance company, they have some very good training materials going to provide to us.
Are we sending out like test? This is not training where I call, somebody looks at a screen and watches a 20-minute video. Do we have dummy emails?
We're gonna start a phishing campaign also.
Okay,
Training on
so we
phishing.
haven't done that
Yes.
in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm accustomed to, is you have phishing emails that come in and staff either clicks on them or it says that smells and
Right.
hits the delete key. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Funds is specific to finance.
Right.
Personnel.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
And then the last one was number 9 on the payment approvals process, and I know you're remote in process of that, but that was the one thing I requested be put in here were some examples of of what other policies were. So I know you're working on that, but those are the 3 that caught my attention. Any others?
Not on our end.
Okay, great. Next item is the CFO Assistance Project. There's really nothing to report. The initial meeting is next week, so that will be kicked off. That will, again, I'm expecting the turnaround in that to be, I guess we'll find out Tuesday what the turnaround is. And then the last item on the agenda is the Prop L expenditures update. There's a page here which is, I guess, tells us what was spent. Is there something that tells us where we are relative to the projected total and what our budget is, or?
I put what our paid was through, that's the 107 million. What other things were you looking for? I wanted to make sure that I didn't put stuff that wasn't what you were going for. And so that was a question I had of you.
Last 2 months, we presented these 2 pages here, actually 3 pages. One was the breakdown by department or by branch, and then we showed the summary of expenditures relative to the original plan and what our cash deficiency is. So
We have that.
no, I just have
Okay.
this. This is on, you don't have this, I just brought this with me. But, I understand this is what's been paid, but I think we have to manage against where things are expected to be concluded. So I would like to see this report every month going forward that says, here's what the actual is, here's what the remaining projected is, and here's how we stand in the aggregate, because I can't tell what needs to be funded based on this. This tells me what you spent.
Okay.
We're back to square one, it feels like. So you have the formats, you have the file. I update the file every month and retain a copy of it so we can track it, and we'll go from there.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Is there any other business? Or does anybody have any questions on the Prop L? Sorry, I didn't need to skim by that. Any other business? I don't have any. Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Thank you. And Teresa, will you take roll?
Absolutely. Not at me like that.
Hey.
Ms. Wyckoff. Hi. Mr. Thies. Dr. Pandolfi.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes,
She sounds so tall on there.
thank you. Hey, I'm only 4 minutes over